Face to face. I'm Niresh Eliyatambi. Well, are we having elections or aren't we? Yesterday, Mr. Palitha Rangabandara threw the cat among the pigeons by saying that the elections should be postponed for 2 years. And of course, that raised a storm of protest and a lot of public discussion and raised the blood pressures of millions of people, I'm sure. But of course, today, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena clarified matters by saying that the elections will be held according to the Constitution. And to discuss this, we have with us today Mr. Sumedha Ratnayake, National Organiser of the United Republic Front, and Mr. Tharaka Nanayakkara, Attorney at Law and Deputy Legal Secretary of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Naresh. Thank you. Good evening.
So, let me start with Tharaka. What in the world is going on? After nearly or more than 90 years of having elections, long before we even had independence, we had elections, and we can't get this straight. What is going on?
I think, Niresh, interestingly, I think Sri Lanka is one of the first Asian countries to receive the election system, the Westminster system, and the suffrage, all this. And the General Secretary of the United National Party, to which we all belonged a few years ago, has made a statement yesterday to the effect that the elections, presidential and parliamentary both, has to be postponed in order to give His Excellency the President a chance to further revive the economy. I would say Mr. Rangabandara has made a mockery of himself and of the system. And constitutionally, this government or any government and this president or any president is obliged to hold an election when it comes to the presidential election 1 month prior to the expiration of his tenure. What is his tenure? His tenure is the tenure of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, because Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, was elected by the parliament to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And he was elected to power, if I am not badly mistaken, on the 19th of November or 18th of November of 2019. So 1 month before that, that is on the 18th or 19th of October 2024, would be the last date to have a presidential election. This is something that cannot be overturned, that cannot be avoided, that can be avoided, or that can be postponed by any legal means. So I believe, I hope Mr. Rangabandara was voicing his personal opinion and nothing else, because coming from him I can understand that. But if it is the policy or the principle or the express wish of the United National Party, that would shock our conscience terribly.
Now let's clarify matters. Does Parliament as it stands have the power under this constitution to postpone elections?
It does, but there is a procedure. Under Article 83, Parliament can extend its tenure and the President can extend his tenure beyond the currently prescribed 5 years by a 2/3 majority, together with an approval of the national electorate, that is of the people.
A referendum
coming together, basically 2/3 majority of Parliament, as well as, that is 150 MPs voting in favour, as well as a referendum in favour. So however, this government started, President Ranil Wickremesinghe started with the support of 134 MPs, but that majority has dwindled to about 117, to be precise, I suppose, 117, and that is what has been reflected in the previous bills that were brought into enactments by the vote of parliament. So firstly, they do not have the requisite majority, the two-thirds majority in the parliament, and I don't think any citizen worthy of their salt would vote to extend the period of this parliament or this president. Particularly, I would say that if we recall, in May 2022, people got into the streets protesting against the government, protesting against the incumbent president Gotabaya Rajapaksa and this system. And it would not be a stretch to state that this parliament lost its mandate that day during the Aragale, at the peak of Aragale, with the people struggle with what happened. This parliament effectively lost its mandate. So clearly, I don't think it will go that far, because I don't think they can push this through parliament to begin with. But if it goes to a referendum, I think people will teach them a proper lesson, but at the cost of public funds.
Well, it takes about 10 billion rupees to have an election.
And then it's 2 elections thereafter, the referendum, and we are very confident that people will return a negative verdict for the extension, and then there will be a presidential election.
So it's all about how to waste 10 billion rupees, which the government is very cash strapped at the moment. Of course, it's been for a couple of years. Now, Sumedha, let me ask you, what are the views of your party on this, the United Republic Front?
We think President Ranil Wickremesinghe, he doesn't have any right to postpone elections, because he is not elected by the people of this country. 2022, during the mass struggle, people wanted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign from the post, and he resigned, and then Parliament elected President Wickremesinghe, and he can only complete this President Gotabaya's term. It ends by 2024 November 18th, I think. Before 1 month, as per the constitution, elections has to be held. Therefore, I think he doesn't have any right to go against this constitution. And the people of this country are suffering now, actually. Not only the president. During the July struggle, that Aragale, people wanted to throw out the entire government. That was the will of the people, but they survived, and they elected President Ranil Wickremesinghe as the head of the government. Now what he has to do is, I think, he has to let people to elect a new government as per their will. So we are totally against any moves for postponing elections, whatever presidential or general elections. These elections has to be held on time. That is our view.
Right. So, Tharaka, let me ask you, President J.R. Jayawardena, I believe in 1982, did hold a referendum. He had the 2/3 majority. He then had a referendum, and the people voted not to have an election and to extend the term of Parliament by what was it, another 6 years?
Yeah, for 6 years back then.
Yes. What's the difference between then and now?
Niresh, in my opinion, by 1982, when the famed referendum, in Sinhala it was called the Lampu Kalagidi Sellam, because the lamp was in favor of the for people who were in favor, and the other symbol, the pot against for the people who are going to vote against. So back then, Honorable His Excellency J.R. Jayawardena was a very powerful president, and I would say much more popular than His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe today. He had a parliament where he controlled not 2/3 but 5/6, even a greater majority than 2/3. But what happened thereafter? He postponed. The intention behind that referendum was to protect that supermajority, nothing else. Because
that's right.
Naturally, after 5 years of governance, he would have still won the elections. He would have still had the power in the parliament, but the majority would have slightly reduced, at least, at the least.
He may not have got the 2/3.
He may not have got the 2/3, and he didn't. So the intention behind the referendum was to protect the supermajority, as I said. For that, he followed due process. Constitutionally, he got the parliament's approval and then went for the referendum. But we were looking at, if you go back to 82, though I was not born, this is what I have read. If you look at the situation back then, open economy had been just introduced 5 years back. After Mrs. Bandaranayake's 7 years of miserable governance from 70 to 77, people were finally having sufficient imports. People were finally eating rice all 7 days without any restrictions. Technology was coming in, development was coming in. So the public mindset was totally different. Where are we today? Now we are boasting. I heard the acting Minister of Finance, the State Minister of Finance, making a statement when they were introducing the economic transformation bill, when they were tabling the economic transformation bill, to say that the last quarter the development rate was 4.3%. But when you factor in the annual economic growth rate, it's not that rosy. Yes, we agree. President Wickremesinghe has managed to bring the economic situation from about -200 to 0. But from 0 upwards, it's a tough journey. And it's a journey that has to be carried out according to the will and wishes of the people, because according to the Constitution, sovereignty of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka is not in the President, not upon the government, but upon its people. Therefore, a mandate for a president, however good he may be, is essential and constitutionally required. And therefore, I don't think we can firstly compare the ground situation of 1982 and 2024. And also, what we have heard was that was not the most peaceful, or the how can I say, without offending my old political party, it was not the most properly held election from what we have read and heard. So situation is different now. You can't do that kind of gameplay now. People have evolved, the country has evolved, people are more aware today, and particularly they do not have the standing, the public acceptance. President Jayawardena clearly had public acceptance in 1982 after 5 years of strong economic performance. If at all, if the economy slowed down a little, that was after the 83 riots and the growth of the LTT. But at 82, it was very rosy. So, right. Situation is completely different, and I don't think the Navy can follow Uncle's footsteps in this instance.
Well, it was once called the Uncle-Nephew Party, UNP, but that's beside the point. Sumedha, let me ask you, do you agree with this fundamental stance that Tharaka just elucidated, that there is this big difference between the Jayawardena years and that referendum and the situation now?
No, actually no. I don't think that referendum also, what Tharaka referred as Lampu Kalagidi Sellam, was conducted in a, peaceful way. There were a lot of malpractices. We know very well how UNP handled that Jaffna Development Council elections during President Jayawardena's time, right? There were a lot of elections like that. So, always you have to allow for people to vote peacefully, right? If not, it will pave for violent protest. We have experience, no? We know what happened during these 1980s. 1983 there were Black July riots, and then during 87 and 89 there were a lot of armed struggle was there conducted by JVP. So I think the starting point for all these things, all these struggles, is that referendum.
Right. So Sumedha, going back to even before the Jayawardena era, when you look at Mrs. Bandaranayaka's term, even that was supposed to be from 1970 to 76, but she extended it to 77. Would you like to comment on that aspect as well? Now we are delving into the past.
Not only the UNP, I mean, what Mrs. Sirima Bandaranayake did that time also not correct, no? We can't agree with anyone who is trying to postpone elections. We can't agree with them. We have to allow people to vote, people to elect governments, people to elect head of governments, people to elect parliamentarians. Otherwise, those governments won't be democratically elected governments. So for anything, for development, for proper conduct of this governance, I think first thing is head of governments and parliamentarians has to be elected by the people.
Right. So, Tharaka, let me ask you, now we have that precedent where Mrs. Bandaranayake, Prime Minister Bandaranayake, did postpone the election, and then of course she was swept out of office 1 year later, 1 year after postponement, and then the new parliament voted to strip her of her civic rights, which went on for quite some time. So we actually have a precedent set back then where if elections are postponed through irregular means, there is actually the precedent set to take action on that.
Correct, Niresh, but to elaborate on your point, I don't think Mrs. Bandaranayaka's civic rights issue was for the postponement of elections alone, but the political cost for her was huge, immense, because I believe the elections were due in 1975, not 76, because it was a 5-year term under the 70 constitution, and she extended it by 2 years, citing the non-aligned conference to be held in Colombo and various other reasons. Had she had the elections in 1975, from what I have read, from the research I have gone through, I don't think UNP would have had the same majority of 5/6. You see, by 75, yes, people were frustrated about the economic condition and particularly the import restrictions and the prohibitions on rice, prohibitions on certain staple foods, all this. But yet for all, it was not as bad as 77. And UNP was not as powerful as it was, or as well organized as it was by 1975, because Mrs. Azawardena organized the trade unions, the village level political organizations, all this. It took a long time. So, and the political cost didn't stop there. It didn't only cost her the elections in 77. It didn't only cost her the UNP getting 2/3, actually 5/6. It only didn't cost her civic rights, but her entire political future came into standstill because she couldn't run for the 1982 presidential election because she didn't have civic rights. She had to bring forward Mr. Hector Kobbakadu as the candidate.
Right.
Then certain internal truffles started. Her daughter, Her Excellency Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga and Vijay Kumaratunga were one fraction. Son, Andhra Bandaranayake, Maithripala Siranayake, and that lot were one fraction. And the party's own candidate was not backed by the party fully, Mr. Hector Kobbakadu. So, and then in 1988 she finally managed to run for the presidential, where in 82 she would have, I don't know whether she would have succeeded in the presidential or not, but she would have had a chance to establish a political position. And then that dwindled her chances in 88. And then by 94, party stalwarts thought Chandrika was a better bet than the old lady who was slightly past the expiration date in politics. So that was the political cost. So this is a good example. Finally, what I want to say is, this is a good example, and as you said, there's good precedent. Whether it's legal or whether it's karma, it will come back in one way or the other.
Now, Sumedha, let me ask you, wouldn't it just be simpler if the date for the election is set right now, so that everyone would know this is the election, it's presidential, and it's going to be held on this date. What is stopping the president from, the current president, from doing this?
I think president has no right to postpone presidential elections.
Right.
That's what I know. I think Tharaka,
Correct.
he will be able to explain better than me because he is thorough in the constitution affairs. But by 15th of July, by coming 15th of July, I think Election Commission has to declare the elections. And last November 19th, President Gotabaya was elected in 2019. Before 1 month of November 19th, and means before October 19th, no?
Yeah, correct.
19th of October this year, presidential elections should have held. So no one can change it, I think, even the president.
Right, but the exact date would be set by the president.
No, I think
Or
it's
by
set
the
by
Elections
the
Commission.
Elections Commission.
The commission.
But general elections, president can dissolve the parliament and general elections can be held. Right?
Right. So, Tharaka, take us through this once again, the sequence which needs to happen before the election.
Of course. So, as Sumedha pointed out, presidential election clearly constitutionally has to be held 1 month before the tenure is expired. So, Gotabaya Rajapaksa's tenure would have expired on the 19th of November. So, the last day to hold elections technically would be the 19th of October. And I believe the commission must declare the election date well in advance. I'm not very sure, but as Sumedha said, it should be the 15th of July according to Sumedha. Also, the president, though Sumedha said I'm better versed in the constitution, I think he's got everything correct. The president can dissolve the parliament after 4 years of the parliamentary tenure, 4.5 after 4 years of the parliamentary tenure, which authority he got from 23rd of February this year.
Right.
So only thing the president is constitutionally and legally empowered to do, if at all, is to dissolve the parliament immediately. If he wants a general election before the presidential election, yes, that can be done. That can be done, but then you are going to go for an election that the people are not asking for. While the presidential election is due and the parliament's tenure has not expired, it will the 5 years will be completed in August 2025 because the elections were held in August 2020. So you will be giving the elections people have not asked for. It's like when people were calling for the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he got Mahinda Rajapaksa to resign from the premiership. So it's something like this. But given the nature of this government and the political strategies that we have observed of this president, anything is possible. But as a political party, SJB is clearly ready for any election that comes forth, and we will fight hard if there's any attempt to postpone the elections beyond the constitutionally permitted time frame. I think we will take the lead in uniting the entire opposition and challenging any such illegal acts, not only in the courts of law, but also in the court of justice of the people, who are the holders of the sovereignty of this republic.
Now, Sumedha, this entire mess which Mr. Rangabandara created yesterday, which hopefully has now been ironed out, it just smacks of disinformation. And you know, the general population is under the threat of the Online Safety Act, where if any of us say something incorrect on social media, we can be arrested by the CID or whoever. But here we have a politician who is holding office in a political party, an important political party, is saying something like this and creating confusion. What do you think of that happening? Should there be any action taken?
Yeah, I think so, but that is not happening in our country. No? Sometimes that can be his master's voice, not Mr. Rangabandara's voice. You know this, I think these UNP politicians, including President Wickremesinghe, are afraid of elections, right? So they are trying to change things, they are trying to postpone elections, but they have to face the reality, I think. Without facing the reality, you can't govern the country.
On that note, we will go in for a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
We live in a world of progress, but what if progress isn't reaching everyone? Millions of Sri Lankans struggle without access to clean water, safe roads and bridges to a better life. But you have reached out. You have touched their lives. Thank you, Sri Lanka, for making Gammadda the most impactful rural development movement in our nation. Gammadda, for the people, by the people.
The government, instead, governments should be afraid of their people.
NPP is by design, and it's not only in Sri Lanka, even across out of Sri Lanka as well.
I had to go to my cabinet minister secretary even to get a small thing passed.
That's a different question. The authorities are there. Why aren't you going?
The integrity was compromised by the bribery commission.
Chairman of the party does not attend when you all sign a MOU with GLP and Nalagodeva, which is quite important.
Who was trying to safeguard the robbers of central bank.
We know
while
in Sri Lanka there are issues.
Inquiry was going on.
People wanted Gotabaya, right? People elected him.
But what we can see is that it has certainly stalled. There is no public record of what these cases were.
In particular, the things are very severe when President is also the Minister of Finance.
I will give you a post how it came about. It was not argued in the parliament. It was not even put on the cabinet. It was forced down the throat of the people of this country without an election.
T20 ක්‍රිකට් ලෝක කුසලාන තරගාවලිය ජූනි 2 වෙනිදා සිට 29 වෙනිදා දක්වා ඇමරිකා එක්සත් ජනපදයේදී සහ බටහිර ඉන්දිය කොදෙව් දේශයේදී මිහි මත උද්වේගකරම ක්‍රිකට් තරගාවලියේ විස්මය මිස් කරගන්නේ නැතුව බලන්න සිරස TV සහ TV1 සමග රැඳෙන්න T20 ක්‍රිකට් ලෝක කුසලාන තරගාවලියේ පරිපූර්ණ නිලදේශීය විකාශය MTV Channel Private Limited Sirasa TV TV1 Shakti TV www.sirasatv.lk වෙබ් අඩවියෙන්ද තරග සජීවීව නැරඹිය හැකි මිලියන 20ක හાર્ට් එකේ බීට් එක ක්‍රිකට්
Welcome back to Face to Face. We are in conversation with Mr. Sumedha Ratnayake from the United Republic Front and Mr. Tharaka Nanayakkara of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. Now, Tharaka, is your party ready for the election?
Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have been organizing at the grassroots level, at the national level, while certain opponents of ours seem to think that trotting the globe is more important to win these presidential elections. Honorable Sajith Premadasa, the leader of opposition and the leader of the SJB, has been actively working very hard at the ground level, at the grassroots level, and whether it's the general election or whether it's the presidential election that has to be constitutionally held and duly should be held in precedence to the general election, SJB is ready, as ready can be.
And Sumedha, what about your party, the URF? Are you ready for an election? Would you all be running a candidate of your own, or would you be more inclined to support one of the other candidates?
We haven't decided it actually, but we are ready for elections. I mean, if they conduct general elections before the presidential elections, we we are ready for the elections. But anyway, not only the elections and grasping power, we are thinking of the future of the country actually. Most important thing is governing the country. So we can grab the power by forming coalitions and everything, but we think the next government should be a good government with a good team of cabinet ministers, good team of parliamentarians and good team of bureaucrats. So we are thinking of forming a coalition.
And I presume that there are negotiations going on every day behind the scenes, which the public is not privy to. That's politics after all in any democracy.
Yeah, that is true. But we are discussing with SJB. We had some discussions, and we had some discussions in the UNPV also. Actually, we forwarded our set of proposals to Malima also, and we had discussions with SLLP. These discussions are progressing.
But still no decision.
Still no decision.
And who takes the decision in your party?
That is by our political bureau, political committee.
I see. And well, it is getting quite close to the deadline or the time to select, isn't it? We are at the end of May, and now by mid-July, you all need to make up your minds.
Yeah, Naresh, but when the elections are declared, these things will be faster, no?
Yes, well, that's the whole point, that the election seems to be quite elusive, and it's actually not very far away. This is the end of the 5th month, and we are talking about an election which has to be held by mid of the 10th month, so less than 5 months to go. But I wonder what the delay is in setting the date. Perhaps it is that the appropriate astrologer or astrologers have not given the proper dates. We have had that happen in the past. Tharaka, what do you have to say on that point?
I think when elections are determined by the astrologers and not by the will of the people or the constitution, that shows the state of affairs in this country, and definitely it has to be rescued. And a government with sense and sensibility should prevail to take this country forward, and I hope the opportunity is very nearby. The presidential elections will definitely have to be held before the 19th of October, and we will, as the main opposition party, ensure that this government and this president is compelled to comply with the constitution and hold elections.
So, Sumedha, what's your view on astrologers setting election dates?
Most of the politicians go behind these astrologers, but you know, in 2010, a lot of astrologers in this country forecast President Mahinda Rajapaksa would win the election, but
I think 2015, no? Wasn't it?
Yeah, 2015, right? So I think it's totally on the hands of the people, not on the astrologers. They can set dates, but decisions will be taken by the people.
Well, just last month we had a controversy where I believe the 43 astrologers who were consulting for the Ministry of, was it Cultural Affairs, couldn't decide what the auspicious times were for the New Year. And they had quite a fracas on TV and so on. So that goes to underline your point, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about the nomination dates and the campaigning? What are the time periods for that, Tharaka?
So for a presidential election, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a period of 5 to 7 weeks for campaigning, and as we know, there's 72 silent hours, rather 48 silent hours before the election date. So that will be the normal procedure applicable, and nominations usually is 10 to 14 days is the period. Statutory period also should be close around that. So all this the procedure, the wheels have to be set in motion by at least by July. People of this country who are the holders of the sovereignty of this democratic socialist republic are entitled to know when the elections will be held. So as you initially pointed out, all these problems will be resolved when the election commission declares the date of the elections. And I would think it is the respectable thing for His Excellency the President to come forward and confirm to the people of this country who are agitated by the very shallow remarks of his political party's general secretary, and put things in perspective and put the country at ease.
Well, Sumedha, one of the issues which people ask us in the media is, will they amend the constitution? Can they amend the constitution? Don't you think, Sumedha, that it would be best if the president came out and said that he is not going to try to amend the constitution, that he will not support anything like that?
Yeah, I think it is good if presidents come forward and declare it to the people. But I don't think he will be able to pass this through the parliament, because I watched programs, lot of programs involving SLPP parliamentarians, Mr. Namal Rajapaksa, and most of these people within the government, MPs within the government, and even the Prime Minister, they are telling that they are opposing this move. So I don't think they will allow to change the constitution,
but
or extend in the term of the president.
But politics, as you know, makes very strange bedfellows, especially in Sri Lanka and South Asia as a whole.
But I am sure if they try to do that, there will be another July struggle like in 2022.
Well, we hope it
there will
won't
be mass
come to
protest.
that.
People won't allow that.
Now, Tharaka, all this focus by the political parties on getting elected, on winning the presidential election, and presumably after that the general election, but it's going to be tough going for the party which wins, isn't it?
Correct. So that is the whole purpose, Nivesh. This country is, I think we have moved away from venerating individuals as leaders, because the last and the sorry example was Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He was pumped up so much, he was portrayed as this genius who could take this country forward, and the slogans said this is the last chance to save the country, the last chance. And yes, Gotabaya Rajapaksa managed to exhaust that last chance that anyone else would have, and we are in economic doldrums now, though the government and the supporters of the president constantly boast about how the economy has recovered. We all know we have not started repaying our foreign debt. We have not started honoring our commitments, including the international sovereign bonds that have been backed by state guarantees. We were declared bankrupt, and several international accreditation agencies such as Standard & Poor's declared the Sri Lanka's credit worthiness was D or D minus, which is equivalent to a national bankruptcy. And yes, we have managed to go to the IMF on what conditions I am at a loss to understand, but there's a process in motion. But as I say, the recovery is a long run, a long operation, and that is when experience and know-how comes into play. I can speak on behalf of my party. When you look at our economic team, Dr. Harsha De Silva, Mr. Iran Vikramaratne, Mr. Kabir Hashim, who are all experienced economists who have proven themselves running organizations running banks, running ministries, and proven themselves. And we have, as a responsible political party, I think URF has also done that as a minor party. We have, as a political party who is intending to govern this country in the next elections, put out our economic plan. When there was a crisis, we brought in the economic blueprint 1.0, and then taking into account the subsequent developments, we have introduced blueprint 2.0, which is our plan, which is our policy to address the economic issues. So that is why I believe certain political opponents, I don't need to shy away, NPP is backing away from the economic forum debate. We have invited them. Forgive me if I'm opening a can of worms in the absence, but I have to say this. We have invited them for a debate with their economic council and our economic council, because the issue of this country is not about who makes the best speech at a podium. It is not. The issue of this country is who has the team to recover this country from its dire economical straits and make Sri Lanka great again. So the simple question to be asked at an election would be that. And I believe SJB is the positive answer for that.
To make Sri Lanka great again. Well, that's a nice slogan. Sri Lanka was the greatest country, or the most advanced one in Asia right after World War II. But now we are one of the worst in Asia. Sumedha, let me ask you, now although Tharaka said that it's in the long run after the election that the country would recover, there are very heavy expectations by the public for a quick turnaround, aren't there? How long would the public's patience last? They have already been suffering for several years. How long do you think the new government would actually have?
We have to face the reality, I think. We have to face the reality. And you know what happened, and now we are a bankrupt country, no? Still we are a bankrupt country. We can't get any loans for development or anything. We are only getting financial assistance from IMF. And we have had with the IMF agreement also, we have to fulfill some tasks. They are not easy. Even any government which will come to power has to face the reality. But I think if we manage the country in a proper way, by closing doors for the corruption, and if we have a good work plan, it's not too long. It's not too long. We can make this country a better place by working hard, but power has to be with a good leader. He should have the management capabilities, and he should have a good leadership. His approach has to be pragmatic, I think, right? We know how, even I worked in the Ministry of Megapolis and Urban Development during our leader, Mr. Partli Champika Ranawaka, ran the ministry. So we have experience, and we also have a good team. So I think without, last time what happened in 2019, lot of people came forward and they showed lot of things, right? And people elected Gotabaya Rajapaksa as the president. We should not do such type of mistakes this time, I think.
Now, Tharaka, speaking of the megapolis, which is something which we don't hear much about, but at one time that was the buzzword, the megapolis of around Colombo. But Tharaka, a new government, or even this government, simply can't afford such massive mistakes in judgment, can it? We can't afford these white elephants.
Well, To be honest, Niresh, I don't think megapolis as a concept was a white elephant. I think it was a very viable concept where successful examples have been led. I mean, even if you take Dubai, or even if you take Abu Dhabi in the UAE, or even if you take the new face of Saudi Arabia, there are countries which are developed in that sense. It's just that we did not manage as a nation to attract the Sumedha would correct me if I'm wrong, I hope, attract the requisite investments. And I think as a part of this project came in the light rail system under Japanese aid of 1% or 0.1% interest. 0.1% interest to be repayable after 20 years. First 20 years you only pay the interest. So those kind of projects were scrapped by the Gotabaya Rajapaksa government. That is why I'm generally very respectful when addressing any party leader, but I'm sorry I can't say anything Mr. or Excellency or Honorable to that gentleman for the mistakes he's done. So they scrapped this entire Japanese aid project, and I believe it went to Bangladesh. And that has damaged the goodwill between the two countries, so much so that even when someone else comes into power, it will be difficult to negotiate that kind of generous aid schemes. That is, though it's couched as a loan, I would call it direct aid, because 0.1% interest repayable in 20 years is next to nothing if you when you consider cost. So the political cost created by the Gotabaya Rajapaksa regime is immense and terrible, and it's a good reminder not to bring into power anyone who's even distantly associated with that regime.
Now, Sumedha, what should the priorities of a new government be in terms of the economy and in uplifting the people?
Yeah, priorities has to be given to the education, I think, and the health and the development of the industries. You know, now these electricity prices were increased, and we are the highest, I think,
highest price of electricity in South Asia.
I think electricity tariffs, if we take our electricity tariffs, we are second to Singapore only. So when we compare it to Vietnam, Vietnam is 40% lower than us, right? So we have to have our electricity tariffs similar to other competing countries in the area, in the region. If not, we can't develop our export industries. So we have to think about these electricity tariffs, how to reduce these electricity prices, right? This is the priority of the coming government. And about 600,000 students in our country are not having their proper meals. Malnutrition is high in the country, and about 66 million of people are living below the standards. It's very difficult for
below the poverty line.
Below the poverty line. So it's very difficult for them to have their 3 meals per day. So first priority of the government is to reduce the electricity prices, then increase the production in the industrial sector. Then we have to address the agricultural issues, right? Our lands are limited, so we have to increase the productivity of the agriculture. And health sector, we have had good health system in the country, and now it's also going down, so we have to improve that sector. And education, and I think our way to develop the country relies mostly on the knowledge of our people. We have to go for a knowledge-based economy, actually.
So that's quite a long list of priorities which have been neglected by successive governments. And we are almost out of time, unfortunately. Tharaka, my final question to you, what should the priorities of a new government be?
Clearly, Niresh, I think firstly, whilst resurrecting the economy, which will have an impact on the general public, it is very important that we strengthen our social security and social safety net. So if we are elected, SJB believes in a social market economy where there's minimal government interference for the markets to be determined by supply and demand, but only to interfere to ensure fairness. We believe strongly in a strong social security net where, as Sumedha mentioned, about 6 million are below the poverty line, and the middle class is withering away. The middle class is withering away. Increasingly, people are falling below the poverty line with this cost of living, with the taxation, with the utility bills such as electricity and water skyrocketing at unprecedented levels. So these things have to be managed whilst making sure that the economy is resurrected, whilst making sure we pay back our foreign debts, whilst attracting mega investments, foreign direct investments, and renegotiating, if possible, the terms with the IMF and with the Paris Club and with the other lender countries such as China who do not belong to the Paris Club. It is important that we protect our own, particularly the poor and the downtrodden, and SJB is strongly committed with the leadership of Mr. Sajith Premdasa to do just that and lead this country forward.
And one final question, would your party be willing to enter into a coalition with the other major parties if there is a hung parliament?
We have created, Samagi Jana Balawega has established the Samagi Jana Sandhana, where various people from various political camps have joined us, accepting our principles. I must make this very clear. SJB has an economic policy. SJB has a policy for all other matters of governance, and whoever who joins SJB and the wider alliance would be working on a common agenda based on the SJB principles. And yes, we are open to accept for a few political characters who have basically people, the general public are aware who they are, except for some of them. I think SJB is open to a wider coalition if required, and to govern, we would like to invite every honest, genuine politician who feel for the country to join hands with us to deliver Sri Lanka out of misery.
That's quite a thought, and I'm afraid we are now out of time. And my thanks to Mr. Sumedha Ratnayake, representing the United Republic Front, and Mr. Tharaka Nanayakkara, representing the Samagi Jana Balawega. Thank you very much for this quite informative and educational discussion. And thank you very much to all our viewers who have been watching us. Stay tuned for the news. Have a good evening.